Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is a progress update for set 2. Now, those of you who don't know, haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, I'll just briefly go over the sequence of events that we've done. Last year I started working on plants in January, and literally all the plants that were worked on in January, February and March were put together in a progress update in June. Yeah, so we went back and had a look at those plants to see how they were doing. 6 months or so on, at the beginning of January, we did a second progress update for the same set of plants. So that's the principle. There's actually 7 sets in all, and this is a progress update for set 2. Now those of you who are really interested and want to go back and have a look at the first progress update for set 2, that was done in July, and it was for all the plants that were worked on in April. If you're incredibly enthusiastic, you can get the list of plants and go back from the dates in the video and find the individual videos where the work was actually done. And if you watch all of those, plus the first progress update for set 2 and this video, you'll have spent about 6 hours watching my video, and I wouldn't expect anyone to be as daft as that. Bearing in mind, I'm sure a lot of you saw them as we went past them in the first place. But what I will do is link you to the first progress update for this set, which is like a 30-minute video. You might want to go back and watch that to see what they were like in July before we do this progress update. So there'll be a link in the description to that video, and I'll put an info card up with a link to that video now. Right, those of you that have been away, welcome back, and you'll have seen what the plants were like in July. Now let's have a look 6 months or so on what they look like in February. Now I'll tell you straight away, one of them was put in here incorrectly named and shouldn't have been in here, so that's gone, and 3 have also gone to the orchid heaven, so we've lost 3, so there's 4 missing from the original list. Nonetheless, I've still got a table full here, so we will have a look at what we've got. Right, the first one is a Masdevallia, and it's Inca Prince. Now we've only just looked at this literally yesterday in the Everything in Bloom video, but that's a totally different type of video to this one. This is looking at progress following a repot. So what we're looking for here is signs of growth, both on the top of the pot and in the pot as far as roots are concerned. Now in this particular case, there's quite a lot of roots that have sort of started at the top and headed down into the pot. Some of them have got right down to the bottom of the pot. Some of them are heading down the sides. So there's root activity going on in here. I'd say it was relatively slow progress. And then on the top of the plant we've got a new growth here, another one here, and several of these up here are new growths. So slow progress, but progress. And when we worked on this, it got split into 2 plants. So we now do a progress update on both. Yeah. So that was what you would call the mother plant, the main plant, but a bit broke off when I was repotting. And that one, excuse my back, but there isn't really a better way of doing this. This is how it has to be. And this is the other one. This was the division as such, and we have, quite honestly, got better roots going on this one than we have on the other one. It's also managed to bloom on a very small division, but it's wobbling as well. This needs to be staked. It's because it's got a bloom poking up, but it needs to be staked or it'll wobble and disturb or even break some roots. So we've got signs of root activity here, and we have got a couple of new growths, and we have a bloom, and we do have roots in the pot. So the little division isn't doing bad. I must remember to stake that before I put it back where it goes. I mean, you have to bear in mind this time of year, my plants only really get handled to do something like this or to water them. And I mean, that's in the cooler, shadier sets. They're getting watered about every 10 days at the moment. So it only gets picked up every 10 days, unless there's something going on like this. Right, so that Mazda was worked on the 1st of April last year. And along with it, in the same video, the worked on video I mean, were 2 Restrepias. Now this one, I explained it in the last video, but I'll do it again. This has got quite a lot of root activity, and that's good, because when Restrepias are repotted, you've often got too much top growth for the roots that are working, and it ends up dehydrating no matter how much water you give it. You can't, you know, if you overwater it, you'll rot the roots you've got. You've just got to let it settle down and grow new roots. And if it's not hydrating sufficiently well, you will get leaves like this. Yeah, now that's a very old leaf, so that's not a new growth. So that's as a result of the repot. There's another one here, a bit kinked. Yeah, but then these are new leaves as well. So the new leaves now are growing okay, and we do have a reasonable pot full of roots. Yeah. It's doing okay. Now it's classed as Restrepia cuprea, which is a species, but it has to have hybrid written on it. The reason being, most likely reason, I don't know specifically because I didn't tell Sarah on it, came from Burnham's, but it came from their private area at the time. I think they've put some out in the public area now. But I, just said, have you got enough of those in the private area to spare one so that I could have one? And she said yes. Well, Arthur said yes. But basically what happens sometimes is in an area you'll get a set of plants come into bloom, and then down the line you see a seed pod, but you don't know what the pollinator was. You can't guarantee that the pollen came from a bloom on the same species gathered around it. It could have come from the one next door. And because you can't guarantee, you have to say it's a hybrid, even though I'm confident it's the species. But that's the explanation for having a species name but still classed as a hybrid. So that one's doing okay, roots are growing quite nicely, new growths are opening up nicely now, and it blooms now and again. It's just finished about 4 blooms actually. And then the other one, this is a much bigger Restrepia. Again, we've got good root activity in the pot. So it's taken, following its repot, it's worked on its roots and grown quite a few new ones. This one does actually have a bloom, but it's going over. I think we looked at that at Everything in Bloom yesterday. But again, some of the older leaves that were new following the repot have got that crinkled look. But newer leaves that have followed on are okay. Again, that's just a matter of getting a decent root system so that it can hydrate. Relatively large plant, this one, quite honestly. It's grown quite well, and that's Sanguinea A in quotes, was probably an awarded plant that sometimes somebody couldn't be bothered to think up a name. I've got no explanation for why that's got A in quotes, but anyway, it's doing okay. It's progressing nicely. We'll save that one. Right, so those 3 that we've just looked at, or 4 as it is now, they were worked on the 1st of April last year. We now move on to the 12th of April, and the first one is a Miltoniopsis. Sorry, it's a Miltonia. We won't get those 2 muddled up, will we? Now this, when we looked at it last time, wasn't doing that well, but it had some maturing growths and it had some signs of some new growths coming. And that's not far off where it still is. It was pieces taken off a mother plant, the old parts discarded, they were all shriveled. And the new growths have pushed on reasonably well, they haven't grown good root systems. These are not well rooted plants at all. But what they're doing now is producing another set. So these were a bulb with a new growth when they were worked on, 12th of April. And those bulbs have now matured. In most cases, not bad sized bulbs, and they're reasonably plump. And all of them are now starting another new growth. Now these new growths, somewhere along the line here, we need a root system, yeah? Because they're wobbling around, they're not well rooted, they just haven't rooted well at all. This one on the end has got some roots going down, but you can tell it's not well rooted, or you would see the white roots around the edge of the pot. Bearing in mind they are planted on the edge of the pot. So that's not doing as well as it could be, but it's going to be coming into the growing season soon. Now this is one that's not under my lights, so it's not getting pushed, you know, with the day lengths. In fact, it's in a relatively shady area. But once we've sorted the lights out and I start moving shelving around, this will come into a much brighter area and it will start to grow better, faster and stronger. It needs some light. And at the moment it's not getting it because other stuff's in the way. And that's a relatively low priority. I'm not growing that to bloom it. I'm growing it to produce a set of nice plants with good roots, which will have an old bulb still with leaves on, last year's growth. These new growths that are coming now, matured, are possibly going to attempt to bloom. I'll stop them. It's the next growth after that, when it's got 3 support bulbs, reasonably good sized with some roots, that's when it can flower. You let things flower too soon, you just drain. It's building up resources slowly but surely, and it gets to the point where it thinks, I might just about be able to squeeze a spike off. That's taking the last of the resources. Better to build up the resources first so that there's plenty to produce that spike with some to spare. And then you'll get a good spike and you won't drain your plant. Right, so that's that one. Now the Sherry Baby, when it was worked on, it was split into 2. There was a small plant, like a small division, that's been lost. That never made it, that rotted. There was a lot of that going on a while ago. However, the main plant, that's doing okay. The main plant has grown on, got a pot full of roots here, can't ask for any more than that. And at the moment it's pushing up new growths, so we've got, you know, new growths. They're not maturing yet, they're still pushing on. There's several, there's that one, there's one in the middle of the plant here. I'm sure there was more than that. Oh yes, and one here. So I'm looking straight at it. There's another one here. So these have got to push on and mature, and with these great big fat back bulbs backing them up, if they attempt to bloom, they'll be fine. There's a lot of strength in that plant, in those old bulbs. Even though some of them are leafless, they've still got the ability to store resources. So there's plenty of resources spare in there for it to bloom. So that's doing good. Bit of a monster, but can't have all little ones. Well, I can't anyway. Right, now we move on to the 15th of April, where we repotted 2 Miltoniopsis. One quite a large plant that at that time, in that video, that looks like a good plant. And it just faded. It just faded away and it's now lost. So the only Miltoniopsis I've got now, which also isn't doing very well, but it's hanging in there, is the little primary cross, Miltoniopsis Venus. Now this is a strange one because this has got a lot of good roots, but the plant won't grow. And given my current environment, it's difficult to work out why. This is a cool grower, but it does have a new growth starting. It's tiny. I don't think this is going to make it. The last new growth is this one. That's not bad, it didn't rot. This side of the plant's not doing, there's 2 little pieces in here, this side's not doing very well at all. So this should be doing a lot better. These are the conundrums that you get with orchids. The environment here is far better for this than any environment I've ever had before, and yet it's just not growing. It just won't grow. So, you know, all I can do is just look after it and see if it'll get better. But the growing season isn't going to make a lot of difference to that one, I don't think. You know, this is a cloud forest dweller. So this is not a bright light orchid. This, you know, it's not missing its sunshine or anything daft like that. It could be missing its higher humidity, but anyway, it's just one that doesn't want to grow. So be it. Right, the next pair of orchids was wrong on the last video. I got a plant misnamed and it ended up in a set that it shouldn't have been in. And this was worked on the 20th of the 4th, and it's one of those that had no name, and several people pointed me in the direction of most likely names, and I agreed with several of them. So I'm happy that this is Colmenara Masai white or pink. Now the trouble is, the white one's often got pink tinges and the pink one's often almost white. So I'm still not absolutely sure, but I'm pretty sure it comes into the category of Colmenara Masai something. Now this was starting a new growth last time round. I'm not going to get it out of the... Actually I will get it out of the pot because I haven't done. The pot itself is held onto the black pot with a clothes peg, because it kept falling over. So I haven't had a look at the pot for a long time. I wish I hadn't now, because there's virtually no roots on view. But nonetheless, the latest bulb is a good one. It's plump, it's got leaves, it doesn't seem to have very good roots. But again, it's got strength in that bulb. It's got one other bulb with some leaves on, with a leaf on, and then it's got 3 back bulbs that are very badly shriveled. So there's not a lot of resources in this plant except for the latest growth. So between the 2 latest growths, hopefully the next growth will do well. Yeah? So that should progress on. Let's put my peg back on. It's just to hold it still when I'm picking it up. Right, so, and the other plant that I was a single back bulb division, and I thought it was a back bulb division of that plant, and it wasn't. It was a back bulb division of Anna Claire, Odontoglossum Anna Claire, and it's therefore not part of this set. So that's been not lost, that's actually doing okay, but it's in a separate list. And then, so that was the 20th. On the 25th of April, I worked on 2 species Oncidiums, one of which is lost. The one that's lost was my Chrysomorphum, and that's just gone, which is a shame because that was a present from somebody. Still, you know, you can only do so much. This one is the other species, which is Chiroforum, I can never say that word. This one's sort of doing okay. It's grown some roots. It's a little miniature Oncidium type. It's grown some roots, and at the moment it's coming back into growth. So you're going to have a job to see them, but like on the end of my finger, there's a tiny little growth there. There's another one there, and there's another one there. So it's coming back into growth. It's got some reasonable roots, and this one does catch the lights, and it's coming into growth. You can put 2 and 2 together there. It's not directly in the lights, it's what I call catching the edge. Let me explain. These 2 lights up here have got a dome-shaped lens. They produce a 90 degree beam. And it's got quite direct edges. So outside of that, there's not a lot of light. And that's right on the edge of that beam. And reasonable distance from the light, so it's getting some light, but not a huge amount. So that one's doing okay. As I said, the chrysomorphum was lost. It's just seems to be the nature of some of the plants. They go into a period, a winter or whatever, weak, because they've had a bad growing season and they got disturbed, because these were all worked on at the beginning of last year. So they've had their roots disturbed, they haven't recovered very well due to a poor growing season, they go into winter in a weakened state and they just fail. And I've had a fair few on that list. Less this winter than the winter before, so we're getting better. Anyway, so that's set 2. We will move on to set 3 and do a 6-month or so progress update at the beginning of March, and those will be the ones that were worked on in May last year. So there's one a month coming up as we go through, and we will be generating some new sets soon, and that'll be the ones worked on this year. They'll start getting progress updates. It's complicated for me to explain, although it's easy. The admin of it is easy because I write it down in my notebook and keep lists, but many people, it's not just a few, I'm not catering for a few here, many have said they like progress updates. Obviously, if in that list today, if you've seen a particular plant that you'd like to follow the complete progress of, you can go back to the dates I've given you and find the original video and have a look at the work that was done, and skip through till you find that one in the previous progress update. So there is a way of following a plant right through as a single plant if you choose to do so. Now, the other thing I want to say is that's your lot till Sunday. I've got an Orchid Society meeting tomorrow, Saturday, so I'm highly unlikely to film anything tomorrow. This one will be posted late on Friday, which gives the previous video as much time as possible to get some views. And then this one, by posting it later on Friday, a lot of people will be in bed. They'll watch it Saturday, hopefully, please. And obviously by posting it late on Friday, I'll probably catch a lot of the people in the States, during the daytime. So that's the logic of posting one later in the evening. And again, as I said, I may film at tomorrow's Orchid Society meeting and film the plants that people put in for the competition table and those that are just brought in for show, if I get time. But it's subscription times of year when the poor old treasurer has to earn his keep, because there's lots of people keep coming up and throwing money at me, which all has to be recorded and everything. So I might be a bit too busy to film tomorrow. Yeah, so there we go. Hope you enjoyed the progress update. As I said, they are a bit of a faff for me. I've got to do pop-ups of the plant names. I've got to dig out a picture of the blooms, if I've got any, and pop them up as well, so you can see what we're aiming for when we're trying to get something to bloom. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please say so. If you didn't, say why not. If you just sit there silent, I don't know whether you liked it or not, do I? Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.